I'm Nicholas Kuhne, founder of Wunderbrand, and we're going to deep dive into the world of branding, digital marketing, and entrepreneurship. My career includes working with some of the world's top brand and advertising agencies, as well as working at brands like Nando's, MTV, and Comedy Central, where for 20 years I've honed my expertise in building brands in emerging markets. Based here in Oslo, I lecture on digital marketing, helping the next generation of marketers navigate this dynamic world. I'm here to share powerful insights from my own journey and bring you the wisdom of leading voices in branding and marketing from across the globe. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking to scale, a student eager to learn, or a business seeking to elevate your brand, you're in the right place. Welcome everyone to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with me, Nicholas Kuhne. And today we've got Charlie Riley. Now, Charlie comes from an industry that not all of you might know that terribly well. So we're going to go into a bit of information on that, or a little bit of detail on that. Charlie is the first head of marketing at OneScreen, a measurable outdoor advertising platform, and has been the first marketing hire at 6 organizations, leading marketing and sales at seed stage startups up to $200 million organizations. A father of 3 and former CMO. I think we're going to have a good chat here, especially about outdoor marketing and how we can use that to get further growth in an organization. So Charlie, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So I wasn't expecting to have a chat about billboards because this is primarily a digital marketing podcast, but I believe there's more to billboards than just print and sticking it up on a farm somewhere. So maybe let's just talk about why, after choosing startups, you've gone into a anachronous industry, the billboard industry.
Yeah, you used the word when you described the OneScreen that relates to digital channels, and that's measurable. I think a lot of people don't think you could measure a billboard from a marketing standpoint. But you can, and there's ways that you can measure billboards. I think there's a lot of misperceptions just around that as a legacy industry and a legacy medium. There's hundreds of executions you can use to really tell a story in a unique way. Billboards are obviously one of them, probably the one that most people think of. Billboards or wrapped cars or airport wraps for product launches or for conference plays, especially if the huge investments go into conferences now. That's another way to have an experiential element that's outside the venue. We could drive 3 or 4 vehicles around the venue and it really stands out. You might have some lighted trucks. You can do things like you could wrap a blimp if you really wanted to and you had the budget for it. So there's a lot of executions for out of home that I think a lot of marketers maybe are unaware of. And it's a fun opportunity to tell that story and to help marketers think differently about how to include brand that encompasses a way to complement digital marketing, because we're not expecting a marketing team to move all their budget to out of home. It's a complement to that. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that works together.
You touched on quite a few key points there, and I suppose measurability is the key thing that a lot of marketers are looking for, especially with digital marketing giving us so much data, we don't know what, it can choke a camel. So in terms of the outdoor marketing side, what kind of techniques do you use to measure footfall or eyeballs on these platforms?
It really comes down to what the goal is for the brand. B2B or direct to consumer brands, they probably want foot traffic. They want users to buy something maybe in store or on an app. If it's B2B, they maybe want a download. They want activity to their website. They want them to visit a booth at a conference. So it really depends on the end goal there. But there's a couple ways that we can measure. We can do control groups. So we can control, say we do a long enough campaign, a brand campaign in a couple markets. We can do a control group who has not seen the ads. And if that's billboards, if that's wrapped cars, if that's bus shelters, whatever that may be, those who haven't seen it versus those who have. And then we can show the actual lift based off of cooking their site to be able to show how much additional activity came from those who were exposed to the ads. QR codes have made a renaissance over the last few years. So that's another way that we can utilize either direct to download an app. We can utilize those on different executions. So That's another way that we can measure that and track that. And then there's another thing that I think marketers maybe aren't aware of. Everyone has a mobile ID for the most part within their pocket. They have a mobile phone that transmits information that is not tied directly to the individual. So we wouldn't know who that person is, but based on the location of where the billboards are, for example, we'd be able to see de-anonymized information of, say, a demographic that had exposure to that ad. It's not going to be 100% in terms of capturing the entire population or audience that passes through for a number of reasons, just like there's been changes to email marketing results, for example. We can show to some degree of validity that the audience that they wanted to see, not just the general audience that drives down a throughway, they were exposed to those billboards or those ads. And so there are ways that it's similar to digital marketing to be able to say, we either drove lift, we drove conversions, we helped to build brand awareness. We can do brand surveys prior to and after to see if there was any lift there. So there are ways that the whole industry can be measured.
In the olden days, so before all of the social media doohickeys came about, doing billboards obviously very important because it's very targeted, similar to Google, your Google business page, where you're doing your location marketing around your business. I suppose out of home is really useful for targeting a region or a specific area that you want to drive growth in. And I know with doing this in the past with mobile phones and convenience stores and brands like that, restaurants and so on, having a very localized campaign makes a lot of sense, because not a lot of those people necessarily will see your ads on social media or on TV, on radio, because they're stuck on listening to podcasts or they're looking at reels and that. So it's a really effective way of location specific marketing, if we want to just break it down for those who haven't done it before. In terms of prestige projects, billboards obviously slightly more expensive than traditional, well, it is traditional media, slightly more expensive than sometimes doing a Facebook ad. The balance between sort of prestige, so if you mentioned startups, and I think startups need to move away from, some startups need to show that they are not just online, they're also in the real world. Talk to me maybe about why startups are using out of home sort of as a differentiator for themselves.
Yeah, I think a lot of startups are using a couple different executions because they want to look bigger than they might be. They also, like you said, in the real world, they're seeing diminishing returns and diminishing ROIs on digital channels. Paid search is expensive. Digital buys the cost per acquisitions are going up, and the response just from oversaturation is it's inundating the same audience that probably a lot of people are talking to. Even though it's been around for a long time, it's a medium or a channel that's sort of like what's old is new again. And so it does stand out because the best part about the first part of what you were talking about, the science piece to what we do, is the really important part. We can narrow down. We don't just buy based off of, like, someone might come to us, and a lot of this all depends, but someone might come to us and say, we know that the majority of our audience is in San Francisco. We want to talk to tech companies there. Well, that's great. There's a huge concentration of that. But what we're able to do sometimes is take a look at their target list to say, who's the top 100 companies you really want to talk to? We can narrow down based off of where we see their offices are, where we see maybe traffic from who flies in to certain airports within certain cities, to say there's actually a higher concentration in these secondary cities. And we can actually spread a campaign out over a 3-month period in 2 or 3 cities versus maybe a 1-month campaign in San Francisco. So you're going to actually get a much greater response from the people that you want to talk to in multiple locations than maybe just the one that you thought of. So there's a lot of science that goes behind it. And then there's a lot of art. So it's a mixture of like the left brain, right brain, but a lot of startups, they want to use this as a creative vehicle. It's a canvas to be able to tell a fun story sometimes, or just to do something that maybe one of their competitors wouldn't do. So a lot of our customers, they see this as an opportunity not only to plant a flag in a new geography If they're doing a rebrand or if they're doing a product launch, it's a great opportunity. If they're doing an ABM campaign, that targeting, we can get really specific down to putting a mobile truck outside of a company's headquarters when we know that they have a board meeting. Things like that stand out. And so that's why startups are seeing this as a unique vehicle to try to extend what they're already doing on digital.
It reminds me of a story of a company that wanted to be bought by another company and made sure that it had its billboards outside the VC's house and on the way to the airport, etc., so that almost sort of like preparing him in the back of his mind that, this is a brand that I should be interested in. So I'm sure there's some amazing psychology going behind billboards as well.
It absolutely is. I mean, marketing is psychology. And just like the study you see now is 30 or 50 impressions that a person needs before they take action, it's the same thing. It's just in a different place. And their guard may be down because you're so used to looking at your phone or on your desktop to see, just inundated with digital channels that when you are driving, you might see something that stands out, or you might say, oh, I've seen that brand, but where did I see that before? So there is sort of that psychological element of being bigger than you might want to be or than you are at that point, or just getting in front of the right people that are not spending 100% of their time on their phone.
You spoke about these billboards and other out of home opportunities being canvases. Maybe let's talk a little bit about planning, because if you're going to spend the money that needs to go into some of these big activities, this is not something you can necessarily do overnight. What is the typical process folks need to go through when they're considering a billboard or out of home campaign? And sort of what timelines, how far in advance should they look? Because I understand that, for example, if there's a very good position, that thing's going to be booked out months or even years in advance.
Yeah, just like any campaign, the more time you have to plan, the better. Obviously, from a rate standpoint and from an availability standpoint, it can vary. And I think that's where a lot of the misperception around out of home is that it's extremely expensive. We can't afford it. It takes forever. There are variables. If you want a massive campaign in 10 markets to cover over a 6-week flight, that's going to take a little bit more timing. Realistically, we could have a brand up and running on a digital billboard truck within 48 hours if they really wanted to, because it's all they're doing is providing a creative file that could be rotated on a truck. And that's actually pretty affordable. I know that from the standpoint of what I've done and what I've seen spends are for digital campaigns, you can actually run out of home campaigns at or about, or sometimes less than what maybe a Facebook or a LinkedIn campaign would be. But the more time to plan, the better, because like you said, availability is a thing. We're always, from the planning standpoint, we're going to look at a lot of variables. We're going to look at what your overall budget might be, what cities you're trying to target. And even if you can give us a list of who you're trying, like who your ICP is or who you're trying to talk to, we can narrow in. There's 2 million plus different options in terms of out of home availability. So there's lots of different ways that we could build a plan. It's going to really come down to a good mix of where you want to be, who you want to talk to, what your budget looks like, and then we go from there. And then the timing, what you talked about, sometimes we can plan within weeks, and it's usually on a monthly cycle if it's billboards or certain other executions, but some of them have a little bit easier flexibility. And then the creative part, it depends. If it's going up on a billboard, there is a production timeline. But if we have a creative file, we can help get that up fairly quickly versus digital ads or digital billboards, which we could get up or we could swap out within an hour sometimes.
Now, OneScreen versus the big boys like the JC Decos and the Clear Channels. What is your big differentiator between these guys? Because this must be a cutthroat industry where your margins are tight and the whole time.
Yeah, just like any other channel. I mean, some might be more ubiquitous, but the ones that you named, those are vendors that we work with. They have the inventory, so they're partners of ours. I think the benefit of working with a company like us is we understand we're a small team of marketers who probably look very similar to the types of companies we're working with. With that kind of ability comes nimbleness and flexibility. There's a couple variables of how we're different. I guess I liken it to being an insurance broker, and I've worked in the insurance world. So you could go directly to an insurance carrier, but you only have access to their products and their line of coverage. If you go to a broker, you probably have access to dozens of options. And that broker's job is to find you the best one. You're not limited by only what that one insurance carrier has. It's the same thing for us. If you go to one of the big vendors, you're probably only going to be given availability to what they have access to. So that's how we're different. Well, we have the largest available inventory in the United States. And so we're able to tie into that. We're able to plan around that. The other variable is planning. We spend a lot of time working with the clients to understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Some of them have really good experience with out of home. Some of them have never done it. And to be honest, as a marketer, they might be sticking their neck out a little bit to suggest a new channel. We want to partner with them and help be an advocate for them to help them understand how adding this channel to maybe their other channels or moving some of their marketing budget around. That's actually a smart thing to do with what we do with an outdoor plan. So that's the other thing. And then the measurability part. I think there's varying degrees of what measurement you can get from certain vendors. So I think when you tie that together and the types of companies we like to talk to and that we do well working with, we have the nimbleness and the flexibility to really to build the plan that they need. And we have the inventory availability to build a true plan that fits with what they're looking for, not necessarily with what fits with the inventory that maybe a different vendor might have.
So a much more strategic mindset basically in the business. If I look at another comparison with companies like OMD and PhD, you are more focused just on outdoor versus being a specialist in 20 different fields.
Yeah, we're trying to be really good at one thing. One of the nice things that we can do is we can help a company retarget. So we can either help do that for them or work with maybe their internal team or their agency to extend a campaign. But we're not trying to be a company that's working in every different marketing channel. We're really good at one thing that maybe either complements what their team doesn't have experience in, or just it can be time consuming to put those plans together. So we're trying to be really good and be the best at helping companies who want to invest in brand marketing, mitigate some of those losses they're getting from the ROI and digital channel, and to sort of spread out that marketing mix. Our goal is to be the best at doing that and to help them tell that story internally to that here, we saw results and here's how we saw those results. And OneScreen was our partner in helping us accomplish that.
So Charlie, as a marketer and a salesman, because that's what I'm sure you support and get involved in as well, you would typically have a new product or a new shiny thing that you think is the best thing since sliced bread. What is that thing for you now? What is the latest, other than, and let's leave out the measurement side, which obviously is a great value, and not just value add, but a proposition. What is the latest thing that you've seen that you're trying to push heavily that you think is just amazing?
And OneScreen or just an idea?
What is one thing you're saying to your team? You better sell this. This is amazing. This is going to create additional value for clients. It's cutting edge. You spoke about blimps and that. Is it a new QR code function? Is it touchscreen billboards? Is there something that you're saying, guys, this is the future of outdoor? Go and sell it.
Okay. That's an interesting question. I think the future probably is going to be dependent upon what their needs are. And I think one of the best, just getting into this role and talking to our customers, one of them, I just kind of asked, what made you think of out of home versus something else? And he had shared that, this is a channel their competitors probably wouldn't spend time in. And so they saw that as an advantage. And I kind of asked, how can we help even more than what we've done so far? And he's just said, bring me different ideas and good ideas. And so I think we could, most companies we're going to talk to probably can't afford to wrap a blimp. I can't imagine too many that are outside of big enterprise companies, but it gets your creative juices going. And I think maybe to answer that question in some degree, we have a big inventory and different ideas that might spark interest around hey, we haven't thought of that. And I like how you're thinking to just, the proverbial step outside the box a little bit. We can do things from an experiential marketing standpoint that looks like PR, but is very targeted. So I think the way we go about planning it, and we've built an internal platform that really uh, we think is second to none. I'm sure every company is going to say that, but we really can help give them options. It might be an ABM campaign, and someone's going to say, how does ABM work with out of home? We can do things like put ads on top of pizza boxes and deliver those to company headquarters or where we know somebody's working to a targeted account list. Now, is that going to stand out? Probably. I think we're going to probably get a call back from it. I think that our customers would probably get a call back or at minimum an email saying like, that worked, like that was pretty cool. So I think we have the ability to use science and art to help them accomplish what our clients are looking to achieve. So is that cutting edge? I think that might be a cop out answer for you for what your question was, but um, it's not one thing. I think it's a combination of that inventory and just the creative thinking that, you know, people are looking for different ideas to try to stand out. And, the digital's just getting too much for, I think, a lot of people, and they're just overlooking it, where we give them a channel and opportunity and a lot of different ways to kind of just look different and to tell a story differently.
Well, outdoor definitely is perhaps the ugly duckling of the media industry and has a lot of potential for folks who want to do something differently. The answer I was hoping for is that you are going to be beaming a McDonald's logo on the moon or doing something like in Blade Runner 2024, where there are these huge wraps, digital wraps of buildings. But we're getting there. That's maybe in our next call. Maybe you'll tell me some of those, some interesting examples of stuff you've done.
I would love to come back on here if they're one of your listeners who has a massive marketing budget said, let's just get really crazy. And I would be the first to come back and tell you how cool of an idea we did. But yeah, I don't know. The sky's the limit. I think there really are some cool ideas that we've seen customers do that it's just fun, to hand out ice cream to people on a hot day in New York around a conference and have them come back and talk to the people at your booth. Like, that's different from a LinkedIn ad. That's experiential. That's face to face. That puts a smile on someone's face and they remember that. So drive around a conference with cars that people are taking pictures with. To use a mobile truck to rotate pictures of your top clients and customers and either drive that around a conference or have them show up at their office. That's a good retention tool. So like those are the types of fun things. Would we love to do a crazy thing where we're wrapping up the Burj Khalifa? That'd be kind of cool. But when someone comes to us with a budget like that and a crazy idea, we're more than happy to help them out with it.
Well, let's hope some of our listeners do have those crazy budgets. Now, Charlie, you've worked. The line that stood out for me here is that you've been the first marketing hire at 6 organizations, and you've worked at startups in that. It sounds like you are a pioneer marketer, which means that you like new businesses, you like challenges, you like things not being perfectly set up yet. Does that characterize you correctly? And then why did you join?
Yeah, I just I like unique challenges. I think it's fun to learn about. I've worked in a wide range of industries, and it's just fun to try to solve a new challenge. Some of them you've got a lot of resources, some of them you don't. And so I think you have to be nimble in what we're trying to do here at OneScreen, kind of think a little differently. That's what you have to do when you're starting a marketing function from scratch. And usually that's entailed working very directly with, or sometimes leading a sales function, which is, marketing is sales, and sales is a very difficult job. I think it's harder than marketing sometimes. It's really difficult. So I have a huge appreciation for that. So it's exciting when there's opportunities that you can start to build something fresh. And so, what was interesting about OneScreen was that it's an area that I've had direct experience in before. I've worked in other industries where I've learned the product quickly, but maybe I didn't work in it day in and day out. Where I've worked for ad agencies where I've sold I've sold media. I've been the media buyer as the head of marketing in other places. So I know the challenges of who we're trying to talk to and what they're going through, how they're trying to sell the idea internally, how they're trying to build their budget, and how to build a demand engine while also supporting sales. So to me, this was just a really cool opportunity with a great product, a product I understand and I get to champion and have some fun with, and a really good team. I mean, we're based out of Boston. I live in Buffalo, New York, so we're kind of spread all over the place. We have teams in India, we have teams throughout the rest of the country, but it's a good group of people. We're trying to solve a fun problem. And yeah, it's just, I think the exposure to what we do and the ability to sell that versus maybe some other things that I've sold in the past that I didn't maybe 100% understand or just didn't have the credibility to selling performance plastics. When you talk about old school industries, I mean, I've worked for some old school industries, but it's always been fun to learn new things. I'm a lifelong learner. My wife's a teacher. I've taught grad courses. I enjoy that type of just educating yourself. But this has been fun, and we have a fun opportunity to really help educate marketers on something they may not be aware of. And I love to see the light bulb go off when I talk about, did you know this could be a part of your ABM plan? Like, how does that work? And then they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know you can measure things like that. So it's a fun problem to have and a challenge to work on. And yeah, it's been exciting since I joined.
Well, it's the one advantage OneScreen is going to get from you as well, is that experience on both sides of the fence is tremendous. And as you said, you know what the challenges are from a marketer and a brand. And now you're on the other side. We're like, hey, wait a minute, I can solve this problem. So that's a good position to be in. Where can folks get to know a little bit more about OneScreen, and if they are interested in learning a bit more about Charlie, where can they find that?
Yeah, OneScreen.ai is our website. They can find a lot of information there, and we're going to continue to educate on a lot of the stuff we talked about today. So that's a great place if you're a B2B marketer, B2C marketer. If you're an agency, we work with agencies, we work with partners who maybe don't have this level that they just don't offer out of home. And it's a new opportunity for them as a lead source or like as a retention tool. So OneScreen AI is our website. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, or at charlieriley.com is where it's probably an easy place to find me. But happy to talk to anyone out there. We probably have some case studies to talk through how we have shown it to work for brands of all different kinds. So yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully we can come back and talk about those wild ideas we did for some of your listeners.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we didn't even touch on our second question, which is internal marketing and why that's important for marketers. So that's a discussion for another time. But Charlie, it's been great chatting to you. I wasn't expecting to talk about out of home, but I'm really glad I did, because I think it really is a great opportunity for some brands who want to stand out and make an impact in a very competitive market where, as you said, social media is getting more complex, getting more expensive, and the return, etc., is slowly decreasing as well. So thanks for your insights. It's been awesome. I'll put the link to OneScreen in the description, as well as charlieriley.com as well, so that folks can find out a little bit more about you. So thanks again for being with us.
Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate it.